is Spider-Man Homecoming, my most anticipated movie of the year. Not by a long shot though, because we still got The Last Jedi coming out later. But still my most anticipated. Just for the record, my most anticipated movie of 2016 was Batman vs. Superman. So anyway, brief history lesson about me. As you could probably tell from the intro, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I'm basically obsessed. Actually, since filming that intro, I've actually acquired some more Spider-Man comics. So here they are. So yeah, I read the original run. I used to read the collections. They're like black and white. And I've read, I want to say all of them, but I'm sure there's some that I've missed of the original Spider-Man run. And I don't know what that's called because there's weird ways to organize that. But basically, the original Amazing Spider-Man run, definitely read stuff sprinkled in throughout. The newest Amazing Spider-Man run that started in 2015, I want to say, might have been 2016. That run is fantastic. I've been keeping up with that one. A huge part of that is the Peter Parker stuff. So I've read some of the Miles Morales Spider-Man, but haven't done much there. And then on top of that, Spider-Man 2 is actually my favorite movie of all time. I'm not saying it's the best movie I've ever seen, but it's my personal favorite. I remember watching the first Spider-Man when it came out as a kid, being excited about that. I remember watching the second one, and those are some of the earliest memories I have, so they're special. Now, so every Spider-Man movie since then has had a lot to live up to for me. I mean, really nothing beats that. You've got like those amazing, swinging shots through the city. It's just like, so iconic. And I think it's hard for, not just for me, but for anyone to live up to that kind of thing with superhero movies in general, not just Spider-Man movies. Here's how I see this, okay? The Raimi movies were there. They were iconic. They're classic forever. They're fantastic as films, and they've got that Raimi style, some of that more over-the-top stuff, and they're definitely representative of the superhero movies of their time. Superhero movies are very different now, so I don't think you could make that movie now and have it be, the same. Then they're like, yeah, Spider-Man's getting his own movie in the MCU. Now I'm like, okay, that sounds amazing. Give me that. But in the back of my mind, I was still thinking, this isn't going to be Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2, but it's probably going to be better than the Andrew Garfield stuff. So, Homecoming reviews start coming in. We're batting 90s, man. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Saw the movie, first showing on Thursday. And I have to say, it's exactly what you want it to be. It's crazy good. Okay, so is it better than Spider-Man 2 in my eyes? I don't know. Is it better than the first one? I don't know yet. I'll let you know as soon as I know. It might take me years to figure that out, because I think it took me years to figure out where Spider-Man 2 stood in, my movies. But I'm also going to watch Spider-Man Homecoming again. So we'll see if my mind even changes after that. If you want updates on that kind of stuff, follow my Twitter. What I really love, and truly, truly love about Spider-Man Homecoming is that it tries as hard as it can to tread new ground, which is something I think that the Amazing Spider-Man series did not do. The Amazing Spider-Man series, while trying to do new things, often repeated tropes. And it almost felt like their source material was the Raimi movies. Whereas for Homecoming and for the Raimi movies, it feels like the source material is truly the wide history of the character from 1963 to 2017. Let's get the nitty-gritty out of the way. I think that Jon Watts, who, by the way, has directed 2 other movies, which I have not seen, he just knocked it out of the park. He really got what this was going to be about and what it needed to feel like, and the whole time I was excited. I think that the best movies are the movies you don't want to end. And that's not to say in other movies you want them to end. It's just like you get to the end, you're like, okay, that was a great movie. It's more like, no, please don't end, please don't end, please don't end. When you feel that, that's when you know that something is just a lot of fun and exciting and, And Tom Holland, by far, is the best actor to play Spider-Man. I have no doubt about that. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are great in their own respects, but they're also kind of polarizing where you feel like you're missing something. I don't think with Tom Holland you feel like you're missing something. I feel like he really brings it all together. Peter Parker is a nerd and he's an everyman, and I think Tom Holland grabs that, but he's also like a fun person, and he doesn't always convey that in like his school life, but as Spider-Man he's really good at doing that, which I think Tom Holland also brings to the table. As far as the other actors go, Michael Keaton, man. Michael Keaton is the villain. That was one thing. When they said that, I was like, oh man, Michael Keaton would not take another superhero role if it wasn't awesome. Like especially after Birdman. And oh man, is he cool. Weirdly, this movie also reminds you why they cast him as Batman, because he just brings that presence and that cool like vibe to it. He's like I think of him as like a Walter White in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Because if Walter White was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, would he be selling meth or would he be selling, Avengers weapons? Okay, anyway, the action in this movie, incredible. No one was doubting that. We saw Civil War. There was a lot of stuff surrounding the suit and how high tech it is that was, people were like, oh, it's Spider-Man, he's not always got a high-tech suit. And to that, I say you're looking at it wrong. Because no, Spider-Man doesn't really have that high-tech of a suit, except for that he does. In the comic books, when Civil War rolls around, he gets a Iron Spider suit that Tony Stark makes for him. And at the end of it, Peter is forced to use his regular suit. But everyone reading that was like, man, I really want Spider-Man to keep that awesome suit. And he doesn't get to. Then, in the new Amazing Spider-Man run, the 2016 run that I mentioned earlier, he built his own suit, because at this point, he's more of an adult, he's grown up, and that's super high-tech, and it's done some cool stuff. Also, we've seen the other suit before, right? We've seen that. This is new. We get a cool new take on it. So, I think that the high-tech suit is a positive. And I'll talk more about that in my spoiler review, because I am going to do one. This is going to be my first one. Ned Leeds' character, awesome. The actor who plays him, whose name is escaping me right now, killed it. Super funny. This movie is really funny. It might be funnier than Guardians of the Galaxy, both of them. I know there was a lot of talk about the John Hughes inspiration, and I think that shines. They do a realistic high school. They don't dumb it down for kids. They just, go with it, and you can really relate to it. And that's the best part about Spider-Man, right? And you get to see him make sacrifices in his life and, to be Spider-Man. And you totally understand where he's coming from. And the movie really centers around him, trying to prove himself as an Avenger, which is also from the comic books. There's a large run in the original series where he does that. And the way it actually ends up playing out really coincides with that, which I will talk about in my spoiler review. And yeah, it was such a good time. Iron Man's role in it is perfect to me. I honestly am maybe one of the few people who didn't have a doubt about that. I was like, Iron Man's going to be perfect in this. That dynamic we know is great from Civil War, and it really is even better in this one. And I think that inclusion is a lot of fun, and you actually get to see a lot of development on Tony's part also because of other things, which is really fun. And something that in the comics that happens a lot that, all of us comic geeks really know about is when there's a crossover character, it doesn't always bring that other character's tone into the book. So for example, when Daredevil runs into Spider-Man in a Spider-Man comic, the tonality is still the same, but Daredevil's in it. If Spider-Man runs into Daredevil in a Daredevil comic, the tonality is the same where Spider-Man's in it. And I think they did that really well with Iron Man, because Iron Man in this movie, he comes in for certain pieces and it matches the tone of the Spider-Man movie. So then when Iron Man comes into this movie, it doesn't turn into an Iron Man movie, and they didn't adapt it so that the tone would be that of an Iron Man movie just because Iron Man's in it. It maintains its tone, and that's what's really brilliant about it as well. And as always, when Robert Downey Jr. is in it, it's awesome, and whenever he's got that dynamic with Tom Holland and with Spider-Man, that is just so much fun. Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan, I think this is actually like his biggest role playing Happy Hogan, because in Iron Man 2 and 3 he's in it but not that much, but in this one he actually has like a real presence, which I think was a lot of fun. So unfortunately, I do have to talk about flaws here. There are a couple that I think, they're tiny, but they did kind of bother me. There is one scene which I will go into in depth in my spoiler talk, where Spider-Man does something, and I think he could have just done something else, and it was still fun, but it kind of felt unnecessary. Not like too much, but it kind of felt like, yeah, this was a fun scene, but this other scene could have just been in this scene's place, and it could have been cooler. And I guess you'd kind of be trading cool or fun. And then the other thing is like, so I think there's that, and man, I'm like really fighting for flaws here. There's that one thing that kind of still bothers me. I'm sure if I think a bit more, I might find something else, but basically the point is you should watch this movie. If you're a Spider-Man fan, if you're a superhero movie fan, and it's pretty distant from the MCU, they do like a cool sum up, and they really integrate it well. So even if you haven't seen Captain America: Civil War, you're gonna get this one. So that's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's good for kids too. Like, there's not anything too crazy in there. There's a couple, jokes that adults will get, but they'll fly right over kids' heads. So no worries there. One more thing I gotta mention is, something really great about Spider-Man is he's always on like a moral high ground, and he's always like morally sound, and you can always trust Spider-Man. And you see that in the comics a lot, and I think that really shines in this one. That you've got a Spider-Man who's really going for the right thing, and he really wants to do things for himself, but he ends up doing the Spider-Man thing instead. And him being younger and doing that is definitely a new thing we get to see, because we get to see that in Spider-Man 2, but he's older. He gets to, he knows that he can go, screw this, I don't have to do this. But when he's younger, he's like, I gotta do the right thing, I gotta do the right thing, I gotta do the right thing, I wanna be an Avenger, And man, like, there are more things to say, but they're spoilery, so I'm just gonna cut this off here. As you can probably guess, I give Spider-Man Homecoming 5 stars. I loved it. I've got my Spider-Man Homecoming shirt. Gonna go watch it again later. You can leave now, but I have one more thing to say. Anyway, Denver Comic Con was last week, and I got to speak to Greg Guller, who, I hope I said that right, but he's a great guy. He worked on a bunch of Disney shows that you have definitely heard of. Phineas and Ferb, Buzz Lightyear, Star Command, you name it, And he actually did work on the Spectacular Spider-Man series. And what's fun about these kind of events is that you get to talk to people, and I was talking to him, I said, wow, yeah, I love Spectacular Spider-Man. It's by far the best Spider-Man TV show. It really, stays true to the characters, even though it does make changes. And he was like, yeah, the guy who wrote it, read those volumes. And I was like, oh yeah, I read those volumes. Anyway, and that's why he was able to create something like this. And to me, that's the best way to do an adaptation, right? Is to take something and, maybe make it fit a new mold, or change things up. Like Ned Leeds doesn't have to be the Hobgoblin. He can be a different character. Things like that. And you do see that in this movie. And like Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, doesn't need to be an old guy. Aunt May doesn't need to be old, because it works out perfectly if you, stick to the core, which is, this is a teenager with superpowers. This is Peter Parker. This is Spider-Man. You go that, you put him in a realm, and you stay true to what the message is and what the purpose is. And that's what this movie does, despite the changes, which is why they don't bother me. In fact, I welcome it, because I don't want to see something that I already know. I don't want to just do the same thing. This is all brand new, while still staying the same. And that's weird to say, but that's what it is, and that's why it's brilliant. Subject to Denver Comic Con, I also, last year, got to meet Stan Lee, and you saw that comic book signed by him, and I was super starstruck, and unfortunately didn't get to say anything, but I'll just say it here, even though Stan Lee's probably never going to watch this. To Stan Lee, Spider-Man is probably one of the greatest fictional characters ever created. It's something that's relatable, something that, it's inspirational. You can learn a lot from that character and that morality, and I think anybody can take a moral lesson from Spider-Man. And when you're going through tough times, sometimes it's just good to read a Spider-Man book or watch a Spider-Man movie, because it'll just, it'll inspire you, it'll bring you joy. Sometimes when I'm stressed out or something, I like to pull out the the Spider-Man 2 video game or some video game, just swing around the city. And that's relaxing, and that's something that Spider-Man does. So, you know, we wouldn't have any of that without Stan Lee. So, you know, thank you, Stan Lee, for all of this. This is, needless to say, now my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, taking over the spot from Doctor Strange. So, excited for Infinity War. Yeah, so, sorry about the rambling, but what did you think of Spider-Man Homecoming? How do you feel about Spider-Man? Where do you stand on this? What's your favorite Spider-Man movie? What's your favorite MCU movie? I don't really care. You know, let me know your thoughts. I really do like it. I like to engage with the comment section. If you're watching this on Facebook or wherever, you know, put the comments down there. I don't mind, or send me a message. I really do enjoy those. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.